Welcome in, fellas. My name is Sweet Phil, and on stream all the time I get asked, hey Phil, when you look at gear, what are you really looking for to decide what you want to keep and use and what you're going to go ahead and scrap? So that's what I'm going over today, what to look for on your gear. Alrighty, just for a couple basics right off the bat here, white and blue stuff past like level 10, you're not going to want to keep it unless you really are hard up for gold and for materials. It just fills up your entire inventory if you pick up every single piece of gear. So at some point, you got to draw a line, right? So like I said, past level 10, it's never really going to be an upgrade for you. Maybe 15, I don't know. There's kind of a guideline there, but rares are going to be your next upgrade. But at some point, probably after moving into World Tier 3, you're never going to really pick up rares again. They're just never going to roll high enough to really be upgrades for you. That's when you're going to be picking up more sacred stuff. But pretty much for me, after I got into like World Tier 4, sacred stuff, I just ended up not picking up anymore at all, even the like rares here. And then you're going to be having ancestrals being your main upgrade at that point. So that's kind of the tier that I end up not picking up things at which point. Now, next, talking about aspects. Now, if it's an aspect of one of the things you really want to use, such as for my build right here, I'm a Twisted Blades Rogue. We have Twisted Blades orbits around you for that % damage. That's one that I'm generally going to want to use. It rolled pretty good, so I'm going to want to keep a legendary that has that. I can either zap it off and then put it on, imprint it on a different item, or maybe it could be an item that I actually want to use. This one right here in particular, though, this is not an aspect I really want to use on this build, or if the high roll, you could use it on a different build or a different character later, but this isn't one that I don't believe I'm really going to want to use. It's also a low roll. The item, which we're going to get into later about the different stuff I look for up there, isn't stuff that I really want to use. It's one I'm going to end up just scrapping. And the same thing with this. It's another aspect that rolled low. It's one that I don't really want to use, that I wouldn't imagine using. And the stuff up above isn't that great, so we're going to go ahead and scrap that. Now, armor and damage per second is going to be important on the weapons you're actually attacking with. The damage per second is going to be way more important than a small boost on like the armor or something along those lines. Let's say you're using some kind of bow or crossbow as your main damage dealer. This one has way less damage, right? So you're definitely not going to want to throw on one that has way more damage, such as the one I have right there. So on the weapons, the damage per second, more important than on the armor, but getting more armor is kind of important also. But if it's just a little boost, it's not going to be the exact determining factor. Now, after talking about their armor and damage per second, the damage buckets are going to be kind of important. I'm not going to... Understanding exactly the in and out minutia is not the most important, but understanding the absolute basic of what's the most important stuff and what is not is important. Now, underneath this all damage, this damage elites, close stuff, injured, poison, blah, 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 bleeding, physical damage with physical damage versus traps. All this stuff all kind of lumps together, so it doesn't really give you the truly like 100% more damage, right? It all goes kind of together underneath this all damage one. So there's extremely, I don't know if diminishing returns the right word, but these are not going to be nearly as important as stuff that's in its like own bucket. If you want to look up damage buckets or Diablo 4, how damage works, something like that on YouTube or on Google or something like that. I'm not going to go into full explanation. People smarter than me figured this out and kind of got their, opinions on exactly how it works. But the way it seems to be determined is that critical strike chance, overpowered and vulnerable are all in their own buckets. Overpowered is it's only this 3% chance of happening, and getting that raised up is not impossible, I suppose, but it's not one that really is as easy to use to work with. But vulnerable damage, on the other hand, vulnerable damage is key clutch to make things vulnerable and then deal more damage to vulnerable stuff. The next one, critical strike chance and critical strike damage, very important. So that's stuff you're really going to want to look for on your gear: critical strike chance, critical strike damage, and vulnerable damage. So those are kind of the damage buckets or whatever, critical strike and vulnerable, that you're really going to be important to look for. Now, also, your main stat is going to be crazy important for increasing your damage. You see here on a rogue, it is the dexterity. Other builds, barbarian's going to be strength. Other builds are going to have wisdom or intelligence. You're going to just go ahead and scroll over these for your build to figure out if you don't know which one is your quote-unquote main stat. But that's why I have almost 700 dex, and the other ones are so much lower. I want to increase my damage. That's really going to be the one that helps you out the most. Now, when you're looking at gear, one of the biggest determining factors for stuff that I really kind of don't want to keep, resistances. And that's because if it has resistances, I generally just get rid of it because resistances are almost worthless in D4. It's not like in Diablo 2 where you have to, man, you really want to get those resistances up to help your survivability. The way it works in Diablo 4 is significantly different. Actually getting more armor is going to help you out pretty much more with resistances than resistances even do. So they're all but worthless. So if I see stuff that has too many resistances on it, such as this armor, I'll just go ahead and rule it out right off the bat. It's not worth trying to, get that to be any good. Now we'll go ahead and take a look kind of at the gear I chose up here and why I chose it. And then after that, we're going to do a quick, almost like a quiz where I'm going to fly through this stuff real quick and show you, looking at the stuff you don't want, you can determine if you don't want to keep that gear. And then you can look at it a little bit in depth more after that. So looking at this crossbow right here, inherently crossbows have vulnerable damage on them. That's what's above that line. That means that's inherently on the weapon. You see the bows have damage to distance. So I generally, here I'm going to go with a crossbow, but vulnerable damage, good. It's got more vulnerable damage down below. And then 183 to my main stat, that's just dexterity. That is amazing to get right there. And then it's got critical strike damage with your imbue skill. So I do use the imbues all the time. That doesn't fall into the main bucket, but this was an upgrade from what I was using before. Not all my gear is absolutely perfect, but having some of that other stuff can help you out. You see a little blue dot, I did re-roll and got that. I don't remember what was on there before, but and then we got damage to injured enemies. Once again, falling into that one big bucket. So it does help you out a little bit, but it doesn't actually, 75%. That's getting close to 100%. It's not doubling your damage, That's not the way that bucket works. But the vulnerable damage and a bunch of dex, super helpful over here. And I imprinted here, you see the Twisted Blades one. So that didn't come with it, but I decided to imprint over it because it had all that dexterity and all that vulnerable damage to get that super important Twisted Blade orbiting around you aspect. Up on the boots, I love extra evade charges, so I kind of look for those on boots, to be honest. Super, super, super important on a lot of builds, pretty much everything. Energy cost reduction is a very important thing to get. Unfortunately, this boot only has 3 stats, but energy cost reduction, dexterity, and some dash charges, dash ranks, excuse me. I use dash. Getting dash ranks is going to be cool. I went ahead and imprinted to get an additional charge for my shadow step. You'll see a lot of this stuff is imprinted over because it's hard to get the aspect and the great rolls on the same item, but because you can imprint over, you can go ahead and do that. Up here, I do love these particular type of pants give you a barrier when you are injured, on top of giving you life with your potion. I kind of like that one specifically, but looking at the armor is good. You get total percent armor, which, like I said, can help out your resistance. Just overall survivability, getting more armor will help you out. It has my main stat, damage reduction while injured. So if you are getting close to dying, which can happen occasionally, you will get damage reduction. And it has Dark Shroud skills on it as well, helping me out. And it's got this aspect that I gain armor based upon the damage I deal. And awesome. Once again, you can see imprinted on their aspect. Up on the gloves, getting attack speed is going to be key. This is the first time we see it, but lucky hit chance percentage. A lot of good different things happen when you get a lucky hit. So getting more lucky hit chance is going to be awesome to get on stuff. A critical strike chance, the more critical strikes you get, the more damage output you're doing. And we got Twisted Blade ranks. Those can roll up to 4 on higher leveled items. You see this is just a sacred. It's not an ancestral. And the item power isn't quite high enough to get up that high. But Twisted Blade ranks definitely helping out damage. We won't talk about unique stuff can, have kind of funny aspects on it and stuff like that. So we're not going to talk about that one in particular. But life after kill is another thing I really, really like to get. A huge amount. Obviously, getting life is going to help your survivability. Am I right? So it's got a pretty good amount of max life on there. And it's got Shadow Imbue ranks, boosting up the damage of my shadow damage that I get from the Shadow Imbue. This is a really nice aspect to get as well. Becoming injured while under crowd control makes you unstoppable. So it becoming injured if you are super low life and you're crowd controlled, when you're locked up almost about to die, you can become unstoppable. It can really help you out. Looking over at the amulet, once again, energy cost reduction, armor, damage reduction from close enemies, which I'm close to stuff a lot because I'm zipping around so fast, and extra movement speed. Never bad to move around a little bit better. Looking down at the ring, really nice ring, vulnerable damage, critical strike chance, lucky hit chance, max life. A very awesome ring. Almost everything I have is imprinted. And another pretty good ring here, 1,000 to life, 1,000. On top of that, has a high amount of critical strike damage. The imbue skill damage, that's nice to get on there. Overpower damage is okay. It is in its own bucket, but it only happens 3% of the time. And getting that percentage up is tough, but it's still, when it does happen, we're increasing damage. It is in his own bucket, so that's good to get there. You notice I actually put in these things to get more armor, because getting more armor, like I said, you could put diamonds in here to get more resistance. A little bit outside the purview of this video, but the armor actually helps you out more than the resistances. That's why I threw in skulls up over there. Now on the weapons, this is where you want to look more at how much damage you're dealing. Just for an example here, you see this has 1,000 on there. This is what I had on before, and I thought that getting more damage here would be more important. On top of that, you got main stat, damage to close enemies, which falls in that big bucket. But this one doesn't have as much stuff on it to truly help you out. So this was a little bit of an upgrade, I felt. Now let's go ahead and take a look down at the rare stuff here, and I'll show you how I can kind of push out the stuff that I don't want super quick. Take a look at the boots here. It's got energy cost reduction, but man, you look at it right off the bat, cold reses are almost important, and movement speed, not going to, after you kill an elite, not going to be important. That's one that I would just go ahead and scrap really right off the bat. Now, the dash charges are good once again, and like I said, energy cost reduction, but yeah, just go ahead and scrap there right away. Look right away, if it has two things on it that you don't actually want, that pretty much determines right there, I don't really need to look at it any further. So boom, you look at this right here, willpower, I don't need. Crowd control duration, I don't really need on this particular build. Get rid of it. Boom, instantly you got crowd control against enemies, and then enemies affected by traps. I don't use traps. And then once again, this has vulnerable damage, ooh, you know, but it ain't got the main stat, but damage to things that are poisoned and damage to crowd control. Once again, don't need it. And if it was a weapon you were using, having that much less of damage per second would kind of rule it out right away. I don't actually use the damage on my bow, but if you did. So, you know, just going a little bit faster here, that's a bunch of skills I don't use. Willpower, smoke grenades I don't use. Dodge, damage to close enemies. It's got a few things there kind of help you out. Damage from reduction from distance enemies, but once again, something that's not going to help me out a ton. Penetrating shot I don't use. Attack speed after dodge, another thing I don't use. So you can kind of look through it super quick. Bam, 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 bam. If you see two of the things that you don't really want, that's kind of where I just kind of rule it out right there. So, hey, if this video helped you out, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe up for more future Diablo 4 content. Peace out, fellas, and keep slaying.